Hello, how are you doing? Today we are going to be talking about technology and policies and procedures in our sports medicine class. I'm going to cover four sections. The first would be policies and procedures on technology usage. Section two is going to be issues associated with those tools and technology and the steps we take for discipline. Section 3 is going to be means of communication between teacher and student, as well as I'll also touch on communication with parents if that needs to happen. Lastly, I will talk about a few procedures for routine tasks that we use quite often. I do have a set of notes I'll be running off, which I also will make available for all students to see. So with that being said, let's jump in section 1. First thing I want to talk about is the school-wide issued Chromebooks and my expectations for those. With these Chromebooks, I expect them to be brought to class every day charged, as well as recommending bringing your charger with you. I know other classes use them on a regular basis, and I understand they're going to die. It's going to happen. But if we have those chargers with us, we have plenty of outlets in our facility so we can continue to work. Like I said, we do use them quite regularly, as well as if I'm ever out in an excuse me, if I'm ever out due to an emergency and I have a substitute, all of your work will be posted straight to Google Classroom. Things I expect with the Chromebooks is they're used when appropriate. There will be times when we're doing some hands-on stuff. At those times, Chromebooks need to be put away. The reason for that is we don't want anything to be knocked off a desk, falls, breaks, and you're liable for it. So only use them when we are asked to use them. And lastly, one of my big issues is stay on course. A lot of times we'll have students that start browsing. I know a lot of the websites are blocked. However, students find ways to get around them. And that's a big issue, as we want you guys to stay on course, and overall we don't want you guys being on an inappropriate site where you get in trouble with the school. As far as inappropriate use, the way I discipline is I use a 3-strike rule. I'll warn you the first time. Second time, I'll ask you to stay after class, have a conversation about how you're inappropriately using your Chromebook and how we need to adjust that. Thirdly, strike 3, call home, and then after that, if we have to send you to the discipline office because of inappropriate use of technology, that's what we will do. I haven't had to send anyone up yet. I do not plan on having to do that. One thing that we'll skip over the first 2 strikes and go straight to calling home is plagiarism. With access to the internet, plagiarism is a huge thing. Most students, the biggest thing is they use plagiarism because they didn't have time to finish their work. Overall, I'd rather you talk to me, ask for a little bit more time. I am flexible on some things due to things that come up in students' lives, so I understand emergencies happen. Another piece of technology I want to talk about is modality usage. So when we're using our electrical stim, ultrasound, light therapy, or ThermoStim Pro machine, one thing we always need to do is be under supervision of myself or another licensed professional. We do not horseplay around with these. They can seriously hurt someone if you're not using them appropriately. For example, the ultrasound can actually burn someone's bone from the inside out of the body, and that could create tons of issues, as well as the E-stim can also cause electrical burns. So anytime you're using it, make sure you're under direct supervision. Only do as you were asked. And if you ever feel uncomfortable, immediately stop. Hit the red button and we stop right away. I'll never be upset for you being uncomfortable and making sure you're doing the right thing and stopping the treatment. And we can always start over. But safety of our athletes is our priority, as well as safety of our students too. And as far as discipline on that, we start out, I'm a baseball person, so I call it an 0-2 count. So we're already on 2 strikes. The reason for that is, like I said, they are potentially dangerous if they are used in a manner they were not intended to. So they are very serious. So just keep that in mind. If you ever have questions about them, please ask before you use them. Excuse me again, sorry. Section 2, safety overall and in our lab setting. Overall safety, obviously we all abide by school rules, but one of the big things that we've really been talking about lately is our lockdowns and fire drills. Anytime you hear the difference between those alarms, make sure you listen directly to me and do as you're told, or the teacher that is supervising you, because in the past, as I've told my students and the rest of you, that what I do is I pass off my attendance to a teacher next door, depending on which classroom we're in, because we do use two different classrooms. And they will take roll, because then I take a major role on in first aid and safety and search and rescue. I understand that chances of that happening are very slim, but it's something to keep in mind. Secondly, talking about lab setting. Um, excuse me. Lab setting, we're always very, very careful of horseplay. There are things in the lab that can be easily broken. We don't want to knock things off the table, as well as we don't want to jump on the treatment tables, break those. If we're using modalities for a lab, obviously no horseplay. We've already kind of touched on that. And again, if anyone's uncomfortable or has questions, please ask. Even if it slows things down a little bit, I'd rather us be on the same page and make sure we are doing things right. As far as means of communication between students and teachers, easiest way to communicate with me is email, due to my schedule being different from almost every other teacher on this campus. Phone calls are accepted in either one of my classrooms. However, it is rare that I'm in there after school. I'm usually out covering sports or games. Email is the best. I'm available by email almost any time. I have my email accessible on my phone. I try to reply as quickly as possible. So just keep that in mind. Biggest thing is keep the subjects appropriate. Do not ask about a grade over email, because we don't necessarily know for sure if it's you. Chances are it is you, but talk to me after class and I'll get your grade that way. As well as any issues that you have within class. Please come talk to me. I'm not going to go back and forth over email. That's the biggest things. Obviously, email standards, keep it professional, like we've talked about. Make sure you address the subject in your heading. Whether you're emailing me or another teacher, please use appropriate introduction and appropriate closings. Keep it professional, because we're all you guys are all high school students, and you will be in the workforce, and you're going to have to use that appropriate means of communication sooner than later. Lastly is confidentiality. As well as I've told you guys before, and it's in the syllabus. You guys have my full confidence in that I will keep all means confidential between the two of us, unless I need to take it to another teacher, another employee of the school district. But it's not something that's going to be discussed with other teachers just sitting around during the lunch hour. So moving on to section 3, we kind of talked about communication methods. As far as times available communication, email anytime. Weekends, I may be a little slower to respond depending on what I have going on as far as games. Same with after school. I'm typically not on my phone or checking my email during a game unless it's an absolute emergency. Usually, if I get an email, I'll take a quick glance, see who it's from, depending on the subject. If I need to answer immediately, I can at halftime or on a timeout real quick or something. Appropriate subjects, if you have a question about an assignment, if you're requesting over the weekend, sometimes during football, we have a lot of students wanting to stay on Mondays to get their lab hours in. I'm fine with you emailing me that. However, if I don't get back to you, just double check with me as soon as you see me. Office hours or by appointment, you can come in at lunch. However, lunch is my time for treatment with our student athletes, as well as right after school. So if those are the only times that are available for you, communicate that with me. I'll find a way. I'll make it work. If I need to let athletes know that they will not be getting treatment for a few minutes or a few minutes later, if I have to cut things short. If anytime your parents need to contact me, Email is going to be the best way. However, if they want to talk over the phone, I can come in a little bit early if that works for them, or if I need to stay a little bit later to make that phone call, I will do that. So please let parents know that, as well as I will address that in my parent letter that I send home in the second week of school. As far as cell phone contact for medical emergencies, if you were one of those very few students who have had me for a couple of years, and the administration has approved that you have my cell phone number for when you travel with our sports teams, if someone were to become injured, please keep that to yourself. Do not let anyone know you have it. Like I said, the administration knows who has it. Any inappropriate use of that will be disciplined immediately. So keep that in mind. Lastly, social media accounts, not only for myself, but for students as well. Anytime we are working with student athletes, we stay off social media. We're not taking videos and posting. We're not on Snapchat while we're in the athletic training clinic, because that actually violates HIPAA laws, which is patient confidentiality. So we want to make sure we keep all those put away. I do have social media. It is all private. However, do not try to request to follow me. It will not happen. I consider it inappropriate, as you should too. And anything you post on social media, if you're wearing any of your Apple Valley High Sports Med stuff, make sure it's appropriate, because word does get back to teachers. And if we have issues with that, we'll have to address them with administration. Lastly, policies and procedures for everyday things. Game and practice prep. Anytime you're asked to prep for games or practices, make sure you do so in an appropriate manner. Sometimes you guys are sent outside of class to do things. Administration as well as security is well aware of that. So just make sure you have your sports med pass with you and you're acting appropriately. Anytime you travel on away games, we've talked in the past about what to wear. Obviously, if it's cold, dress for the weather. But we do keep things uniform because we like to look professional. We prefer black pants, or if you would like to wear khaki, that is fine, with our orange sports medicine polos. If you show up in a t-shirt and ripped jeans or blue jeans, we're not going to allow you to travel. That is a school rule. We like to represent our school well in a professional fashion. Thirdly, I should say, I have an example for you. We're going to talk about our personal protection equipment when we're dealing with bloodborne pathogens. So one of the biggest things, as you can see, is our gloves. For me, I like my gloves a little more form-fitting, because a lot of times I'm working with steri strips and sharp instruments, so I do not like to have a lot of slack in my gloves. However, for students, if you're strictly dealing with blood, as long as your entire hand and your wrist is covered, if it's a little baggy in the fingers, that's okay. It's actually going to be easier for you guys to take off. So let me roll up my sleeves here. So as you can see, my gloves are totally on. They completely cover my hands. There's no rips in them. And like we've talked about in class, anytime we deal with blood, we automatically assume there's a bloodborne pathogen that can easily be transmitted. Nothing against our athletes, but we just need to take those precautions, because you never know when you're going to come into contact with something. So I'm going to show you a way that we'll practice this in class. I actually take a little bit of shaving cream, put it right on my glove. You don't need much. Lather it up. As you can see, gloves are getting white, simulate as if we were working with blood. So one thing to be aware of now we have to get them off, but we want to assume that we may have an open wound right underneath our gloves. So we got to be able to take them off appropriately. Easiest thing to do is find the slack. Notice how I do not go under the glove. I pinch it right here, so I'm not actually touching my skin. Roll it off, inside out, crumble it up carefully. Now I have my free hand. Now we want to find a spot where it's a little bit loose. We're a little bit loose. So for right here, come under, strictly come up, inside out. And obviously the shaving cream, there's going to be a little bit more all over. There is a little bit on my hand. Which brings us to the steps we need to take if we are exposed. We have a district-wide exposure procedure. Fill out paperwork based off what the paperwork says. The school, or I'm sorry, not the school. Excuse me. the district nurse will contact you and set up a time for you to get blood drawn just to be tested to make sure everything comes back clean. Like I said, it does not mean you have anything. It's just a step we have to take to assure that everyone's safe. Lastly is sanitation. We always have hand sanitizer. However, if you are ever if you think you come in contact with blood directly to your skin, or if you have an open wound, we also carry what we call Hibiclens. It is a very strong medical soap that actually helps kill MRSA, staph, and keeps and kills all bacteria that helps transmit bloodborne pathogens. That pretty much wraps it up for policies and procedures on technology and everyday things that we're going to deal with. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Thank you for your time.